Perfect. Are we good to go, Marvis?
We're good to go.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Today is February the 4th, 2022. We're here, as part of the San Diego County Air Pollution Control District Hearing Board, which we're going to be hearing a petition for an emergency variance. And that emergency variance is 4522. I would certainly ask Marvis, to take care of the call the roll and the swearing of the witnesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Since you are the hearing officer presiding, then I will note for the record that Chair Rodriguez is acting as hearing officer for this emergency variance. Before we begin, I would like to ask that if County Council is present, can you please identify yourself? And I will take it upon myself to say that Council is not present. I don't see them in our participant queue. Those staff members that are representing the district, would you please identify yourself for the record at this time?
Yeah, I'm Scott Nestor, Civil Actions Investigator with San Diego APCD.
Thank you. And with those representing the petitioner, please identify yourself for the record at this time.
I'm Alicia Appel, Director of Environmental Compliance for Encino Wastewater Authority.
Tucker Southern, Director of Technical Services for Encino Wastewater Authority.
Octavio Navarrete, Director of Operations for the Encino Wastewater Authority.
Thank you. And Chair Rodriguez, if you'd like at this time, I can go ahead and swear in for public testimony.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. So those individuals that are planning on providing testimony on today's proceedings, I'd ask that you turn your video on at this time. And please unmute yourself. Raise your right hand and I will swear you in. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to give in the matter before this hearing board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Yes.
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Just because, this is always a doubt, that I have, do we need to do anything with regards, to the recording of this meeting via Zoom? Do we need to vote on anything or announce it, Marvis?
I haven't received any additional presentations. And yes, we are recording. This meeting is being held via teleconference, and all votes that are conducted by you will be done as such.
Thank you so very much. We are really very happy, because we do not hear that many emergency variances here in San Diego. On the other hand, that they always required additional scrutiny as well. Not that any other variance actually requires less scrutiny. But it's one of those administrative items that we need to align every single time, just because of COVID and other reasons. So thank you so very much, everybody. So, before I actually get started, we certainly need to ensure, that we are here to hear an emergency variance. And it definitely meets the requirements of the classification for an emergency variance. And this is definitely, equipment breakdown. So I'm going to ask, the district first, to provide, their testimony and definitely their position, on the review to make sure that this request, definitely fulfills the request of an emergency variance. And then, I'll open certainly to petitioners. Okay. These are certainly, conducted, in an informal manner, but definitely within order, so sometimes I will actually ask, yourselves, that definitely use the button and raise your hand. So just on that one. So I'm going to ask, Mr. Nestor first, whether or not he has had the opportunity to review, this petition, and what would be the position of the APCD regarding whether or not, this petition meets the requirements for emergency variance.
Thank you, Chair Rodriguez. I can tell you that we do not oppose it. I have a presentation that it probably ought to be read into the record. just, for information and to share our concerns. So it'll take about 8 to 10 minutes. That's okay.
I mean, that let's actually let's wait a little bit on that one. I mean, I would, the question here, I mean, on the table is, if the district doesn't oppose, has the district reviewed, I mean, the request from the petitioner, and has the district determined, however, that it does meet, the requirements, for emergency?
Yes to both questions.
Thank you so very much. I mean, that's so. I did review certainly what you have presented, I mean, to me, and then taking a look at both rules 99 and 98, I mean, of the San Diego APCD, I mean, rules, and certainly it meets the requirements for emergency. I mean, as of now, based on what I have reviewed and have been presented, with the agreement, I mean, from the APCD, I mean, Mr. Nestor here, certainly we can proceed with this variance. This type of administrative element, I mean, has been an element that I have always added, and it was required by ARB about 7 years ago, I mean, the Scott, so now that we actually have that administrative item, I mean, out of the way, let's get now into the substance of this hearing. First of all, I mean, that I'm going to allow, I mean, that Mr. Nestor to make his presentation. Certainly, a PowerPoint presentation is not a requirement, okay? But during this type of, I mean, teleconferencing meetings certainly help. I mean, so I will definitely accept, I mean, the presentation, I mean, Scott, that you're going to make, I mean, and let that your presentation be part of the exhibits, I mean, that for the clerk of the board. Before we get started, I mean, so Marvis, would you like, to have a naming convention, I guess, for this exhibit?
Excuse me, I do not have a PowerPoint presentation.
Oh, you don't? Okay. Well, if that is the case, then I believe, that APCD will make, I mean, their case and present, I mean, your request first, I mean, from the compliance perspective. And certainly, then petitioner will present, I mean, their position, particularly focusing, I mean, on those elements, I mean, that need to be addressed today, okay? Certainly, I'm also interested in why an emergency versus an interim variance. So, but we actually will take a look at that. I mean, so Mr. Nestor, go ahead with your presentation.
Okay, thank you. Just as an overview, I'm going to cover some background about the facility and their compliance history, then the current breakdown and the variance petition, and then I'll share the district's perspective on the petition. The petitioner operates a sewage treatment facility at 6200 Avenida Encinas in Carlsbad with several processes under permit. The permit to operate for the process covered by the variance petition is the biosolids processing operation. It includes an odor reduction facility, or ORF, that consists of 2 blowers, a biological reduction tower, activated carbon adsorber system, 3 different scrubbers, and regenerative thermal oxidizer. Permit condition number 2 requires the ORF to be in full operation when the biosolids processing equipment is in operation. And full operation means that either the bio tower or the carbon adsorber or both are operating. I should add that the fence line of this facility is about 500 feet from the nearest residence. Now on to the compliance history. Since 2018, petitioner's facility has been the subject of several public complaints and notices of violation. 8 odor complaints were received in March and April 2018 and resulted in a notice of violation for the district's nuisance rule. Petitioner explained that their water treatment microorganisms had gotten out of balance and generated odors beyond their control. In 2020, there was an odor complaint that did not result in an NOV. The APCD inspector at that time did not conclusively associate the odor with petitioner's facility. The facility has been subject to 3 other NOVs since 2018. 2 citations were for process equipment issues, and the third was for exceeding a 72-hour limit on a maintenance project. In 2017, the board granted variances to allow more time for maintenance of a carbon absorption bed and to replace a failing fan. In 2018, a variance petition to allow more maintenance time was denied, as the petitioner could have modified their permit beforehand. The permit was amended in 2019 to change the requirements for the odor control system and lengthen the allowable maintenance time to 120 hours. So that's the brief history. Next, I'll talk about the current breakdown and the variance petition. Petitioner notified the district of the failure of the OCF1 fan on Monday, January 31st, 2022 at 1:45 p.m. The breakdown report stated that the fan wheel had separated from its hub due to a welding issue. For corrective actions, the report stated that the fan would be sent for repairs and would be out of service for 1 to 2 weeks. The district has confirmed the validity of the breakdown under Rule 98, and under that rule, the Air Pollution Control Officer may elect to take no enforcement action for 24 hours following the notification of the breakdown. And that 24-hour period ended on Tuesday, February 1st. Since that time, the biosolids process has been operating with the odor control system not fully functioning, in violation of Rule 21, permit condition number 2. On Wednesday, February 2nd, Encina submitted the petition requesting relief from permit condition number 2, which requires full operation of the odor reduction facility when the biosolids process is in operation. The petition stated that the biotower is not currently in full operation and the fan is not in good operating condition. The petition requested relief until March 2, 2022. I would add that petitioner clarified to me that the carbon absorber is also not operating as it is served by the fan that is being repaired. Petitioner also provided me today with the maintenance records, actually yesterday, for the fan covering the last 6 months. The records show that the fan had a vibration concern during that time, and that there was a plan to correct that in early 2022. Now I'm going to shift to the district's position, looking at the forms submitted by the petitioner. For brevity, I'm just going to provide comments where the district has concerns. These questions are on the form called Facts to Support Findings. The first place that we have a concern, not really a concern, is A2, why should you be excused from complying with the district rule? We don't disagree with the petitioner's responses there on that question, but we think the central issue needs to be called out, and that's that they need to operate the biosolids process either without the odor reduction system, either with or without the odor reduction system, since it's an essential public service. On B2, what consequences will likely follow if your petition is not granted? The district notes that if the petition is not granted, the district does have the authority to issue a notice of violation. On C1, have you received any complaints regarding operation of this equipment? I will tell you that the district has received no previous complaints at all about this specific process and no complaints since the breakdown. Petitioner confirmed today that they have their own complaint line and procedure, and that they've received no complaints since the breakdown. On C2, if you are granted a variance, what steps will you take to avoid a nuisance? I asked the petitioner today if there was anything else that could be done to avoid a nuisance, short of curtailing their operations or modifying their permit. And they responded that they're pursuing a temporary or replacement fan and keeping a closed atmosphere to minimize escaping odors. On D3, what consequences are likely to follow if you're required to wait until the next meeting date for the hearing board? The district notes that the next scheduled board meetings are February 10th and 24th, not March 10th, as indicated by the petitioner. And the petitioner expects to complete repairs within 30 days. Hopefully it's 1 or 2 weeks like they had first predicted. On E, the hearing officer must make the following additional findings. We would just also offer that the district does consider this a valid breakdown under Rule 98. The district also believes that continued operation is not likely to create an immediate threat or hazard to public health or safety, although there is a possibility of a nuisance. The district also believes that continued operation will not interfere with the attainment or maintenance of any national or California ambient air quality standard. So moving on to the district's recommendation, the district is primarily concerned about the potential for an odor nuisance caused by the non-functioning biotower and carbon adsorber. This facility did create a nuisance in 2018, and residents are located to the east and west of the facility as close as 900 feet from the exhaust stack. However, since this is an essential public service and that petitioner is working quickly to resolve the problem, and there have been no complaints after this breakdown occurred, the district does not oppose the variance petition. Should the variance be granted, the district recommends that the variance period end as soon as the blower is reinstalled and restarted. We also ask that petitioner notify me and our general email address, apcdcomp@sdapcd.org, within 24 hours of receiving any odor complaints. And we also ask the petitioners to submit a report to me within 15 calendar days of the end of the variance period. That report should document any complaints and any response to complaints, and when the blower was reinstalled and when compliant operations are resumed. So that concludes the district's response. So thank you for your attention.
You're making me write a lot. And I think nowadays I type a lot faster than I can actually use a pen. I mean, the couple of questions, Scott. I mean, and also this is as well, information for the petitioner. I mean, that this hearing board does not have jurisdiction to grant you a petition, a variance. I mean, for Title V, for nuisance, or for lack of a permit. I mean, so certainly, I mean, that actually creates, an issue here. I mean, that we're not looking at, that certainly granting you a variance, for example, for, the, nuisance odors, but let it be known, though, that that could also be, a very restrictive, for you to keep, your variance up and operating. So that's why I was actually looking, at the other alternatives here. But thank you definitely, for your presentation. A couple of questions, though. Regarding the maintenance record that the petitioner shared with you, Scott, you said that these maintenance records were pretty much for the motor, isn't it? For the fan wheel?
For the fan.
Okay. So how does then the fan correlate to the tower? And to any other activities, that may also, and the carbon bed. Was because I think, that if, this is definitely expanded, to these other types of equipment, I would have actually liked to see, the other maintenance records, at least for the 6 months. Were you able to either request them, or is there, could there be a need for you to review those as well?
So the fan, as far as we understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, folks from the Water Authority, the fan blows into both of those control devices, the carbon adsorber and the biotower. And we don't have any evidence there's anything wrong with either of those actual control devices. It's just the fan that serves them both.
Okay. So maybe, that would be a question, certainly, for petitioner, just so that I'm aligned, in my thoughts on this one. And then the other question is also for petitioner. So let's see, so I believe that, Mr. Nasser has definitely provided the position, and a good summary, from the APCD. So let's actually open it now, to petitioner. And please explain to us, what actually brought you here today. Why, particularly if the maintenance records indicated, there is a vibration on the fan? How it is not that Encina works on repairing, that. And certainly, bring me up to date as to the progress that you have made, to restore conditions. So if you can stage that, in that manner, that will be really very helpful, for me. So, so who's going to be speaking on behalf of Encina right now?
I'll be speaking, and if there's specific questions that I don't cover, Tucker and Octavio can surely represent their elements. So yeah, you had started with a question about the maintenance of the fan, and that does tie into how we discovered it. We have regular maintenance scheduled, and then when on the 31st was the day that we went in to actually disassemble and look at the fan and see if we could do any improvements to fix the vibration. And at that time, when we had it disassembled, was when the team discovered the cracks and that we were not able to safely put the fan back on and continue its operation. So immediately upon realizing that that would affect our operation, within an hour we notified APCD, and their team has been helpful in getting us to where we are today. So thank you for your time and for prioritizing this. For us, obviously, compliance with our permits is a priority. So you had asked about the work we've done. This week we have a contract with an HVAC consultant, West Air, who has been on site this week helping us to work on multiple parallel tracks for repairing the fan and exploring options for acquiring a new fan, so we're not operating a half-broken fan. And so we have some options that we are looking into for temporary fan operations to be able to get the airflow we need within this equipment. And so we have made progress, and we're hopeful that we can find a solution, within the time frame granted today. I think that answered your main questions. As we mentioned, we have tried to maintain as much of a closed operation on the odor reduction facility as we can to try to maintain odors. And in regards to Scott's request to notify the APCD upon any odor complaints, we're more than happy to participate in that and to collaborate with APCD if there is deemed to be some sort of a problem for the neighborhood.
I want to go back, to the maintenance aspect here. According to what Mr. Nestor reported, and I understood, it seems as though that there was a vibration in this fan for the last 6 months. Okay, so could this have been averted? Why couldn't this fan been taken care of? Maybe within a month or two. From the vibration, that was already documented. In your maintenance records. So to avoid, the situation which we're in today.
Tucker, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent question, Chair Rodriguez. So we do periodic maintenance, and we've had several high vibrations noted previously. And what we typically do is we clean the fan because some debris does build up on the fan and sometimes unbalances it and causes that vibration. On the most recent periodic maintenance, we identified that we needed to dig into it a little bit deeper. We had ordered spare parts, including bearings and some other items that were planned to be installed. Now, this takes a little bit of time and a gathering of multiple expertises on our site. And so we have an annual maintenance outage for about 2 weeks of our dewatering our heat dryer and dewatering facility. So we coincided a planned changing of those bearings simultaneously with that annual maintenance because it had the correct personnel and the appropriate time length to be able to address the fan issue. However, as my associate Alicia mentioned, when we went in, we actually replaced the bearings and started to spool up the fan again and found that there was further damage, actual cracks and further damage than was previously identified in our periodic maintenance. And therefore we removed the facility, or we removed the fan and sent it off for tear down and investigation there further. Upon that further investigation, it was found that we did not have any, that the fan was beyond repair. And so then we've enacted the 3 different parallel simultaneous efforts to mitigate the situation as quickly as possible.
It's not easy. I understand.
Mm.
Okay, so it's definitely not easy. I mean that, but certainly, I mean, this is type of the evidence that we want, I mean, to have for the record. Okay. Now, what size fan are we actually talking about, and what would be the cost of replacement?
We're still waiting for the quotes to come back. The 3 different options that we're looking into is the most immediate option. First off is finding a temporary fan with the equivalent capacity. And I believe it's 23,000 SCFM that needs to be flowing through this fan. So we are looking for a comparable fan that's capable of overcoming the pressures as well as providing the flows that the existing fan was capable of. That's our priority number 1. Our secondary task that we're diving into is the identification of replacement parts for the fan that has failed. Initially, we have been quoted 12 weeks on those replacement parts, which is why we're moving priority number 1 on the temporary fan so that we could have a temporary fan in place, be within compliance while we're waiting for those spare parts to come. And then our third endeavor is coming up with an engineered solution. Perhaps this fan failed prematurely because it isn't the appropriate selection. So we're looking for an engineered design to evaluate the current fan and the conditions and the requirements of that fan so that we can proceed with the correct piece of equipment that can have the expected longevity so that we avoid anything like this in the future.
So what is the lead time, I mean, to replace that 23,000 SCFM actually fan?
So with the temporary one, we're hoping to be able to do that in less than 30 days so that we're within our compliance there. With the spare parts, we've had anything from 8 to 12 weeks quoted, but the delivery of materials has definitely been impacting our operations over this past couple of years with COVID. So the hope is that those would be here within 8 to 12 weeks, perhaps as long as 14 weeks for that replacement fan.
Does Encino Wastewater Authority have like memoranda of understanding with other, water authorities whereby you could maybe swap fans or something like that? I mean, and make it, quicker. If there was one that it's available, within one of your loosely said here colleague, water authorities.
This would probably fall under the conditions of a very large, expensive, unique piece of equipment that would not necessarily be stocked by any of our partners. However, several different companies have been engaged. One of our partners that we have worked with in the past, Daniel Mechanical, has indicated that they might have a trailer mounted fan that we could rent for this purpose. So those are some of the temporary alternatives that we're investigating.
out, I mean, again, I'm not going to hold you to, I mean, a specific number, okay? I mean, that's sir. But one of the aspects, I mean, for you as an essential service, know that the city actually allows you is that you need to, demonstrate, that you cannot come to immediate compliance, for example. So, I mean, could you please let me know? I mean, again, ballpark figure. I don't care. I mean, the 6 orders of magnitude. How much of a fan like this would actually cost?
Yeah, absolutely. We just replaced a comparable fan on our odor reduction tower number 1. This is odor reduction tower number 2. And that fan was in upwards of $100,000 just for the equipment. I believe it was another approximately $50,000 of installation costs and timing and contracting for all the aspects there. And it did take an upwards of 6 months to plan and execute that effectively.
So again, I mean, just from my prior experience, again, I have something that is a little bit smaller than you in my facility. I mean, certainly, I mean, it's upwards of $250,000, when all is said and done. Okay, so again, I mean, again, to demonstrate, however, that oftentimes, I mean, this is not as easy as, just turning the switch. I mean, and just, it's not a table fan. That's all I'm going to say.
Correct.
Okay, perfect. I mean, that's so. I believe, I mean, either you, Mr. Souther, I mean, you, Ms. Appel, I mean, whomever, I mean, that you indicated that you were working with West Air, I mean, for the repairing of the fan and options. Knowing really very well and clearly, that usually, I mean, issuing contracts is very limiting as well. I mean, and time consuming, particularly from a government standpoint. I mean, if you actually need to go for a bid. Is that contract active, or is that something that you need to go through the bidding process, contact process, things of that nature?
Alicia, I'll cover this one if you don't mind. So we were very fortunate. We have another HVAC project ongoing at our site, and we have contracted with West Coast Air as our as-needed design builder for HVAC projects. So we would still need to correct this under emergency action with the board, but we do have a contract mechanism in place to activate them to proceed, which they have taken on the initial steps for quoting purposes. And as soon as we receive the quote, then we would start to activate the contracting.
No, definitely, I do appreciate that, because as you know, I mean, one of my concerns right now is the time, period that it will take actually to address this issue right now under an emergency variance. So, I mean, that is really very critical. So that's really very good to hear.
We were happy.
Yes, absolutely very good to hear. One question that I have from a sort of standpoint, I mean, why an emergency variance and not an interim variance?
Alicia, maybe you looked at.
Yeah, we arrived at the emergency and conversations with the APCD staff, especially because, at the moment of the emergency, we were out of compliance and we wanted to act as quickly as possible to achieve compliance and also, or at least to avoid non-compliance. And also because we were hopeful that we could get this temporary solution in place within 30 days. And so it seemed appropriate. But, if we're open to what may happen in the next month and working with APCD if needed for any other sort of permitting option.
I mean, and they're really very helpful, that's for sure. I mean, so that's one of the things that as a regulated community, we need to ensure that, we work in collaboration, in tandem. I mean, I'm trying to actually to refine and make sure that condition number 2, it is the one that is applicable. I mean, again, not doubting that, I mean, Scott, on this one. But I just want to read it again, just to make sure that that's what it is. It says the odor reduction facility and its monitoring equipment shall be maintained in good operating condition and shall be in full operation in accordance with the facility's operations and maintenance manual at all times. So that means though that because of the fan, I mean, it's not operating. The bio tower and carbon, I know they're not working. I mean, the bio tower only in operation, the carbon absorber. So pretty much those are the 2 elements, I guess, that could be affected as well. That certainly, is overall is what you actually called the odor reduction facility. Is that does each tower or does each odor reduction facility have its own permit? Because I heard tower 1 and tower 2. So does this actually does this
Octavio.
apply for tower 1 and tower 2?
So we have multiple odor reduction facilities. They each have their own permit. The permit that we're talking about is just for our dewatering facility, and that is odor reduction facility number 2. That odor reduction facility has a bio tower and carbon beds, and this single fan feeds through the bio tower and then on to the carbon beds, or it can feed exclusively the carbon beds or exclusively the bio tower. All of those options are within our permitting, our accepted permit operating procedure there. However, when we lose the fan, we are not able to feed either the bio tower or the carbon beds without the fan.
And so just to add, there is a permit for wastewater treatment that is separate from biosolids processing. So this is on the permit for the biosolids process. Yeah.
It's really good that your neighbors certainly, have not filed any, nuisance or concern. So that's really very good. I mean, to date. Do you smell anything? I mean, do you have monitoring within the facility? Since, the odor reduction facility, I mean, is not operating. Is there any monitoring that you conduct, Mr. Seller?
That would fall in Octavio's area.
Yeah, so we conduct each shift. The staff works 12-hour shifts. Each shift, they do site odor evaluation, and they also do one off-site in the close proximity to the residents that we have here. And that's documented as well.
And Mr. Navarrete, I mean, when you say odor, is this a qualitative or quantitative look, for like hydrogen sulfides or something like that, some methane? I mean, what are you documenting?
So it's both. It's a qualitative inspection, and we also use the Jerome to record any H2S if those odors are identified.
Okay. And you said that you do this daily.
Yes, that's correct.
I'm reviewing my notes, by the way. Sorry that my head gets cut off on that one. And taking a look at the proposed conditions for this variance, just to make sure that we are okay. So allow me a couple of minutes here. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, thank you, Chair Rodriguez.
Is there any way that you can cap or something? I mean, this is a closed loop system, and also to minimize the odors. I mean, what other controls do you actually have that would not be mechanical in fashion?
As we mentioned, we do have doors on the facility, so those doors closed as much as possible, could help escaping odors. I think that's all I have, unless either Tucker or Octavio have anything to add.
No, it's the building itself is what we keep closed as much as possible.
Have to put myself on mute because my little one is barking. Okay, I mean, that's perfect. So if there's nothing else, I mean, Scott, I would like, for you to repeat, your proposed conditions, please.
Okay. We would ask that the variance period end as soon as the blower is reinstalled and restarted, or, if it's a new one, whatever the corrective action is, and not go all the way to March 2nd, if it's not needed. We would also ask that the petitioner notify me and our general email address within 24 hours of receiving any odor complaints. And we would ask for a report within 15 days of the end of the variance period. And that would document any complaints and any response to complaints, and also when the blower was reinstalled and when compliant operations are resumed.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay, I mean, if that is the case, I mean, and no other comments. Okay, so this session is pretty much closed, and I, as a chair, I mean, hearing this variance request, certainly I'm granting, I mean, this variance, I mean, to Encino Wastewater Authority, I mean, based, I mean, on good cause. So let me actually go for it, and bless Marvi's heart. She needs to make, I mean, there's some sense of what I'm going to say. First of all, I mean, the Encino Wastewater Authority is recognized as a state of California by Health and Safety Code as an essential public service. Therefore, coming to immediate compliance, is could be unreasonable taking of property. Second, I mean, as an essential public service, curtailing operations is unavoidable. I mean, and it cannot be, I mean, completed on that, element. Second, I mean, the Encino Wastewater Authority has taken prompt action, not only from notifying the APCD, I mean, of this breakdown facility, but also has proven and have gotten concurrence that, this is indeed, I mean, as breakdown, I mean, the equipment breakdown, therefore, necessitating this variance. Third, I mean, the cost of installation, I mean, of the blower is, of the fan is such though that as a backup fan is certainly not an ideal item. Certainly changes, I mean, to any of the control equipments also need to be approved, by the APCD. So any corrections, they need to be in kind, and yet, they're addressing, this correction promptly in a three-pronged approach, that I hope, they're really very successful at that. Marvis, you can strike that. That's an internal comment. She's smiling behind the scenes. Conditions, I mean, for this variance. I mean, this variance, certainly, I mean, will go, through the 30 days. And I know that this is against what city, I mean, APCD is responding, but however, I mean, I'm going to be allowing you, I mean, Mr. Southern, I mean, additional time on Navarrete, additional time to make sure that not only this is installed, but properly operated. Okay. Upon proper operation, I mean, that's when this is going to be, nullified. I mean, so the variance actually will go, to upon successful operation of the fan, or, until 30 days, whichever is sooner. You'd certainly need to notify, I mean, Mr. Nestor, I mean, for the completion of this variance. I mean, the instructions will actually appear, I mean, as part of the board orders. Okay. I would like, I mean, for you to provide Mr. Nestor weekly reports of any nuisance, I mean, complaints that you may actually get from your independent EWA hotline, as well as, the weekly odor reports, I mean, that you actually conduct daily in your facility, And these are, to include qualitative and quantitative measurements. That as Mr. Navarrete actually explained today. And these are going to be specifically to hydrogen sulfide, gas. But hopefully you'll have the whole full Jerome and 4 gases, Mr. Navarrete, on that one. Okay, so let's concentrate on that. Within 15 calendar days of the expiration of these variants, or conclusion rather, of these variants, you are definitely to provide, that Mr. Nestor, that then a summary of all the complaints with the, responses, okay, that you actually have provided. And certainly, a report, on the resumption of operations, certainly that has to do, with the proper operation of your fan, so to come back into compliance. Any questions?
No, thank you, Chair Rodriguez, and thank you, Scott Nestor, for your time on this. We really appreciate the board's cooperation in this effort.
Okay, we definitely, again, as I mentioned, once the nuisance complaint, that is recorded, as a true nuisance, then APCD needs to move in. And definitely the other requirements, Ms. Appel, that you provided on your write-up, particularly that of violations, that's a whole different story on this one. Okay.
Thank you.
That as a board we cannot grant. Okay. My goodness, so this is it. Concerns, comments, clarifications? Well, if that is the case, you are my neighbor to the south, okay? So do well for all of us, so, and I will hopefully, that you'll be correcting this, within the period of the variance, and I wish you a wonderful weekend.
Thank you very much, Chair Rodriguez.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.
Sure, bye.
Thank you, Marvis.